What happens when two dudes, one a retired Navy SEAL commander in Colorado Springs, and the other a hippie meditation teacher in New York City, get together to discuss living mindfully? That's a great question, because we don't know what will happen either. Raw, uncut, and unapologetic. Welcome to Men Talking Mindfulness with co-hosts John McCaskill and Will Schneider. Each week, we take an authentic dive into how mindfulness continually impacts our lives, deepens our relationships, and allows us to be emotionally alive. We filter all of our conversations through the man box, where we unpack how as men we are expected to act in society, how fighting the authentic human experience is exhausting and damaging, and how mindfulness can help. Now, on to the show.
All right, brother. Here we are. Here we are again for the season finale. What is that? The end of season 2, Men Talking Mindfulness. John McCaskill coming to you from Colorado Springs with my brother from another mother, Will Schneider, New York City. Hey, today we're going to be covering a lot of stuff. First off, though, we're going to be covering our mindfulness and fatherhood. We're so excited to get into that. We're coming from it from two different aspects. One, mine as a father of 2, soon to be 3, and Will as a soon to be someday father, and as a son. We're both sons, so we're going to be tackling that as well. That aspect of fatherhood as a child and what that's like. Before we do that, though, we're going to kick it off with the ground practice. We didn't discuss this before the show. Will. Who wants to lead it? You want to run it?
I'm going to flip it. I'm actually going to legitimately flip a coin, John, right here. Okay, what do you got?
Let's do it.
What do you got?
Do it. I'll take heads.
Okay, that one went on the floor. Hold on one second. Here we go. All right, heads. All right, you're heads. Up, John. There it is.
All right.
There, heads.
All right, there perfect. Appreciate that. And I believe you, brother. I believe you. All right, so here we are. Let me just put a caption on just so people know what they're tuning into when they get over here. Anyway, yeah. So again, thanks for joining us. John McCaskill here in Colorado Springs, and I will run you through our initial grounding practice. That's how we kick off most of our shows. If you haven't tuned in before, kick it off with a grounding practice, get us settled, get our audience settled, and then we wrap it up also at the end of the show with a grounding practice. So if you are comfortable doing so, go ahead. Close your eyes. Otherwise, just soften your gaze, soften your focus. You can be seated for this. You can be laying down. You can be really in any position that's comfortable for you. And then just bring your attention to, let's focus on our physical sensations right now. Let's bring our attention to our feet and feel them grounding us into the earth, really bringing us to this moment, the here and now, feeling the earth below our feet, whether we're seated, whether we're laying down, whether we're standing, and feeling that connection with the earth, feeling that connection with Mother Earth, and then also that connection through the earth to everyone else here and now. We are all connected in some form or fashion. And that connection is so strong. You can feel that truly as you imagine it and visualize it. That connection to the earth, and then that connection to our fellow humans. And not even only our fellow humans, but every being here on this planet, in the here, in the now. Feel that heaviness in your feet, feel that connection. And then scan up quickly from your feet, through your heels, calves, shins, knees, up into your quads, hamstrings, sit bones. Just feel anything in these spots. Don't feel a need to change it. Just notice it moving up into your lower belly, lower back, upper back, chest. Feel any tension, any pain there. Feel your heart beating in your chest, up into your shoulders, from your shoulders out into your hands, from your hands moving back into your arms, arms all the way back up to your shoulders, into your neck. Notice any tension there. If you've noticed your mind has started to wander, just gently bring it back to the here and now. What it is we're doing, we're in the neck, moving from the neck into the base of your scalp, moving all the way over the top of your scalp, into your forehead, your eyes, your temples, your jaw. Relax that jaw. And then to your mouth and nose, and notice the physical sensation of breathing in and breathing out at your mouth or nose. And let's wrap it up with one last deep cleansing breath. Begin by breathing out all your air together. Breathe deep down into your belly, chest, and relax, letting that go nice and slow, slow, slow. Now, invite some movement back into your body. And if you had your eyes closed, go ahead and open them now. Otherwise, just refocus your gaze. And here we are. Will, brother, how are you?
I'm doing great, Sean. Thank you so much for that. And it's good to be back. And it's good to have everybody out there that's listening, whether now or later. Always excited for the show. A little amped up sometimes for the show. I was kind of rushing to get to the show today in some ways. Like there's a lot going on here in New York City. And but it's a pleasure to be here, and also to be alive in this city. Things are starting to open up. It's kind of exciting to see the city kind of come back to life. So feels good. It feels
that must
good.
Be wild, man. That must be wild.
That's
probably a mindful moment in and of itself.
It very much is. I mean, to see, it's just odd with because there's still kind of some trepidation. Like, are we doing this? Are we going to hug? Are we going to handshake? Are we fist bumping? We're kind of like having those like nonverbal like moments amongst people. But yeah, it's everything is good, and it's thanks, man. It's good, really, really great to be here again.
Awesome,
for sure.
Awesome. Well,
and thanks for that grounding practice. I definitely needed that.
Yeah,
and as we're sitting in that grounding practice, as you told us, and I just want to share this with everybody, as you told us to ground our feet, right? When I grounded my feet, all of a sudden, got a little nervous for the show today. I was like, I heard the word in my head, trust. Just trust. Trust my work, trust my homework, trust all the work I've done over there, trust the show, trust, and just really be in this space of like, here we are. So I don't know. That was coming up for me during the meditation. So thank you for that.
Yeah, man. Awesome. And I love that. Trust. I mean, trust one another, trust the process, trust the show, trust the universe, right? And,
trust all the work we've done, all the work individually, what we do on the show. It's like, I think that's like there's a beautiful reminder in that moment for me. And as soon as I came in, I was like, oh yeah, I got this.
Nice.
I mean, it doesn't matter what happens. We got this. So thanks, John.
Right. Exactly. It doesn't matter what happens, and we're live, we're uncut, unapologetic, raw, and authentic, right? And we've done a show on authenticity, and that's what the beauty of the show is. We're human, and we're not here being robotic, pre-recorded with teleprompters up in front of us. It's raw and authentic, and I love it. I love it. So. Yeah, today we're going to be talking about, again, mindfulness and fatherhood. We'll eventually do a show on mindfulness and motherhood, and then another one on mindfulness and parenthood. And there's a lot of overlap. But specifically today, what we wanted to talk about as men is mindfulness and fatherhood. And in our research for the show, we do a little research on each show. We ended up both looking at the same article. And one of the things that really jumped out at me from this one article from Mindful Fathering, there's actually a quote: mindful fathering is the act of consciously checking into your life as a father. I mean, that's what mindfulness is consciously checking into your life all the time. But mindfulness specifically as a father is consciously checking into your life as a father. It's about staying present in your life as a father, observing the dreary, the ugly, and painful parts of fathering with acceptance and non-judging, and honoring those parts with our full attention, just as we honor the wonderful and sublime moments of fatherhood, rather than numbing ourselves out of our lives through substances, technology, and boredom. And I know I'm guilty as a mindfulness teacher. I'm guilty of this. I will quite often numb myself with my phone at home. And I know we're going to talk about this a little bit more, but
I'm going to go time out right there, John. I'm going to time right there. Okay. I'm sorry. Okay. We're going to do our mindfulness moment, John. Right?
Oh, Well,
that's why we have each other, John. That's why we have each other,
Yeah.
So, I mean, I'm sorry to cut you off. I was like, okay, I'm going to let him flow. And then we'll come back.
Thank you. So,
right. These moments are important.
Yeah.
Go for it. You want to jump in? You want to go? Yeah.
I'll jump in, man. My mindful moment for this week was actually last night, and it had very much to do with the time at home with my children. I was frustrated. I'm not going to get into details about why I was frustrated, but I was frustrated with something going on in the house. And we've got a lot going on right now. We've got people painting in our house. We've got new fences going up for horses. We've just got a lot going on, as everybody does. And I'm not saying I'm unique in that situation, but for some reason or another, I was frustrated. It had been a long day, and I got up on the couch, and my kids, my 4-year-old daughter and my 2-year-old son, started jumping on me. And I was just like, you know what? This is what it's all about right here. They started jumping on me, climbing on me like I was a piece of playground equipment. And, I started tickling them, and we all just started laughing. And I came out of that, I don't know, maybe half an hour just playing, which we're going to get into in the show as well, but just playing as a father, but also just playing as a human being, right?
Right.
And how that made me completely forget about all the other crap that had been bringing me down. And then when I took a step back after that, I was like, that wasn't even worth being frustrated over. It wasn't even worth it bringing me down over. Not only was it bringing me down, but it was bringing my family down, because it trickles down from me into the rest of the family, the kids, my wife, my beautiful bride, who I adore. And, it was making the whole situation kind of toxic. Whereas the kids brought me back to the moment. And that's another thing as a father, the kids can often bring you into that mindfulness. So that was my moment for the week, brother.
Yeah. Well, I just want to talk about that. I mean, so what also is happening there is not just the joy of the kids, but they're like bringing you into this in the present moment, right? Which is really important. But that sense of play, what does that do, neurologically, biologically, hormone cocktail, right? You're upping your dopamine level, right? So you naturally begin to, raise your consciousness raise your vibration into, a greater state of joy of just being more connected to the moment and your kids. And, and it's no surprise, John. I mean, like, as we begin to unlock and study more of the science here in the show and talk about more of the science, and as the scientists study and bring more of the science, it's like, oh my God, like, we need these moments. Right. These moments are so important, and it's awesome because this goes right along into the conversation, about parenting and fathering today, which I'm excited to talk about. But my mindfulness moment of the week, I'm actually, and I say this and I laugh a little bit because I know hopefully my mom listens to the show one of these days, but so I'm actually, I'm going to do an ayahuasca ceremony Memorial Day weekend.
Yes. Nice.
And I'm actually going to sit for 2 nights, potentially 3 nights in a row, which I've sat 4 other times, only 1 night each time I went, but at like different times, like, months separated. But in the process of that, I'm working through a 21-day dieta, which I'm on not like a really, really, I guess a kind of a strict diet. Like, my diet is usually pretty good. So I'm not eating any, really reducing my meat almost to nothing by the time I get closer to that moment, which I don't eat a lot of meat anyway. I've actually been off. Coffee is not part of that dieta, but I'm not drinking coffee. Like I've actually started drinking
Wow.
decaf now. And then within a week, I'll have no coffee at all, like no caffeine in my diet. And that's a choice of mine. But also no cannabis, which I definitely enjoy some cannabis. I'm not going to call it the W word.
Yeah, we're professionals here.
Yeah, exactly. Maybe my mom doesn't know what that is, so that's cool, right? So I definitely enjoy some cannabis in the evening sometimes, So like I've been off any of that kind of stuff, or alcohol, which I don't really partake in, but I definitely have, alcohol here and there. So for just the last 5 days, it's like, whoa, it's like, my evenings are different, it's like, so I started experiencing some headaches. I knew it, like, cause I've done this before, usually like day 5, 6, 7, I usually start getting some headaches cause you're kind of moving through some withdrawal in some ways. So I started experiencing like a headache yesterday. I'm like, oh my God, like my body's been probably the cleanest it's been in like, a year or something like that. But yeah, it's actually, I love really challenging myself with that. I mean, the experience in the ayahuasca ceremony, we're going to, if our listeners out there, John and I are really excited to bring on some experts to talk about psychedelics, and how they can actually really change our who we are in the world and how we do things. I'm so excited. And there's so much amazing, again, like really great research out there, that has been kind of not kept from us, but like, these amazing tools for our own transformation, like mushrooms and, cannabis and ayahuasca and MDMA. Yeah. Psilocybin, that's the mushrooms, right? So I'm really excited to go and do this work.
Nice,
but these 3 weeks is like really opening me up to my habits, and how I typically might do things. And then it's like, so what do I do instead? And then how do I feel about that? So that's been just a really, I really enjoy this part of the ayahuasca ceremony, which I'm going to hit, in not like 15 days from now or something like that. So yeah, it hasn't been that much of a challenge. I mean, but it might be a challenge this weekend or next week, but, so there you go.
Well,
but that's my
awesome,
little mindfulness moment of the week.
And I'm reading a book called Stealing Fire right now, and it's all about achieving higher levels of consciousness through different modalities, and it's just mind-blowing book. And actually got it recommended by a LinkedIn user, a LinkedIn connection with me, and I'm kind of embarrassed that I hadn't read it yet because it's right in line with everything that I practice out. It's mind-blowing. But yeah, all the psychedelics are mentioned in there, and definitely plan on doing my own journeys soon through that. Got to get through baby number 3. I don't think Becca would approve of me saying, hey, I know we got baby number 3, but I'm going to go take off on a couple of psychedelic journeys here. You got the babies? But soon.
Yeah.
So that's awesome, man. Good for you.
Yeah.
So going back to what I was talking about in the mindfulness and how we often try to numb ourselves. We do try to numb ourselves. It's almost an addiction, right? Going back to that dopamine that you talked about is our addiction to these phones and social media and just checking out. And I am guilty of that myself. Again, I'm a human being. Even though I practice mindfulness and I teach it, there's still times that I get sucked into that phone and social media. And my daughter, who's 4, will come up to me sitting on the recliner and grab the phone, pull it down, and be like, "Daddy, put your phone down. Come play with me." Which is basically essentially what happened last night, and it got me out of that funk that I was in. So it's pretty amazing how the little ones can bring us into that mindfulness. And man, I'd love to hear your thoughts as a son. In the fatherhood childhood relationship on what living mindfully in that relationship looks like.
Thankfully for mindfulness, like I've, it's really helped me change my relationship to my parents, to my whole family in a lot of ways. And what's really like the biggest moment for me, like as a son, having a father, having a mother, but just like speaking of fatherhood, so speaking of my father in this case, it's like, just really understanding that he's done the best he could with where he came from, with his upbringing, with like all of his experiences and stuff like that. And there's no like, I mean, definitely not back then. There's no like handbook for great fathering, and in the process of him, right? No, right. Not back. Exactly. But in the process of just becoming more mindful with this and just getting into a place where like, my father did the best that he could. It's like, I just, I really lost my train of thought for a second. I'm watching these comments over here for a second, John. I'm sorry. And I'm trying not to stay focused.
Your father did the best that he could.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, he did the best that he could, and like, and in the process, that's it. And thank you, John, for bringing me back. In the process of him doing the best he could, that's how I know he loves me. I know he loves me. I mean, we talk all the time, like, definitely once or twice a week, checking in with him, how he's doing. And that's like, and honestly, that's kind of his generation in some ways. He's a good man. Like he was definitely in that provider role. One thing about my dad, and I think one of the reasons I'm so passionate about doing more of this work for more people, right, and for more men, is my dad was in that old school generation of like, boys don't cry, like showing the, anger, dominance, controlling, all the things we learned about this confined masculine roles is like kind of my dad is definitely in that box, in that column. But honestly, no fault of his, because all the other men around him, right, and we're doing the same thing, and they were just kind of following suit. And here we are, like part of mindfulness and part of who we are as human beings. It's like we're a product of our environment, and now
and so many are still doing that.
Right, of course. I mean, because they're raised by their fathers, I'm 48, so like we're talking like a few generations here as far as like fathers, but. If you look back, so what about you, John, as far as like your dad and your relationship with him?
Oh, well, my relationship with my father is, I mean, I see him as my hero. We've connected on multiple levels, mostly on the intellectual level, but as of late, or more recently, we've definitely started connecting on a more emotional level. I think he's seeing what we're doing. Like he actually watches the show. He may be watching right now. I'll see if he comments. But hey,
Mr. McCaskill, what's up? Yeah. I'm Will. Hi.
Oh, they love you, man. My parents adore you.
But, oh, cool. Yeah, so, hope to meet him someday. I want to meet him someday.
For sure. We've definitely had our differences. I mean, at times there were political differences and there were emotional differences, whatever the case may be. Sorry, I'm staring out the window as I'm watching a police. It looks like a policeman funeral. A whole bunch of policeman motorcycles just passed by, so honoring that. Anyhow, a few years ago, he and I did a trip across the country together, 5 days. Driving from one point to another, and I had it mapped out. We saw tons of stuff, did a ton of stuff, and I think that was one of the big changes in our relationship. Our relationship has never been bad. I think we just had standard father-son frustrations at a point, but that really, I think that trip really helped us to bond on another level as fathers. Like at the time, I had my daughter was 2. Or maybe had just over 1 actually. Anyhow, the bottom line is he and I did that as fathers, and we talked about fatherhood, and it wasn't just the son-father relationship, but it was 2 fathers talking about what it's like to be fathers, and I think that was a huge thing for us.
What was part of that conversation, if I can ask, John? Like, what was if you want to share a little bit? What was part of that conversation?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of it was imparting our experiences to our children. A lot of it was his experience growing up, like you had mentioned, in that day and age, what his expectation was as a father and as a man, and then just being in nature. Like we stopped at the Garden of the Gods, which is just down the road from where I live now. But at the time, it was part of the cross country journey. We stopped there and walked around. We drove to the top of Pikes Peak. We stopped at St. Louis and went up in the Arch and just experienced the here and now. And a lot of the time when my father and I talk, it was, hey, what's going on in the stock market? What's the weather doing?
Yeah.
What
data.
can I do professionally? Yeah, it's all stuff that's going to happen down the road, stuff that's happened in the past, and not a whole lot of right here and right now. But that trip, though I didn't call it mindfulness with him, there was a ton of it. And we experienced the here and now. And I think that comes full circle to the conversation that we're having here, is the mindfulness that we experienced together, again, without explicitly calling it that, allowed us to bond. And it allowed me to have compassion for him in who he is, his experiences. So that's I think that was the crux of our relationship becoming what it is today. So that's that. Thanks, man.
Yeah, I'm glad. Thanks for sharing that. And you really mentioned a key word that kind of hits me, is that compassion. And also another thing about parenting and my dad, it's like, I'm not going to change him, and I've stopped. And this is a big lesson I learned about 10 years ago when I was doing some work with Momentum Education. It's kind of like Landmark, but it's like another thing. Great organization, Momentum Education. I highly, highly recommend their work. And they really made it clear. It's like, you're not going to change your family. You're not going to change your parents. Right. So instead, it's like, how can you be more with them? Right. And that compassion piece, what does compassion bring? It brings up listening. It brings up more understanding. It brings up more vulnerability. It brings up more authenticity, all the things we talk about on the show on a regular basis. Right. So then I get to actually practice in my family. Right. Which is so important, because those are sometimes the most difficult relationships. Right. And then learning from those relationships, I'm better with you, John. I'm better with other people in my life. I'm better with more people in New York, my students, because I'm learning how to be with my parents instead of trying to control things, tell them what they're doing wrong or change them in some ways. And, like all those things that as a younger man, I just didn't understand. It's like, why don't they meditate, or why don't they go out for a run? Why aren't they doing more of these things that would make them happier? Like that didn't work. And I would get resistance. I would get yelled at, and I was like, I'm just trying to help, but it's a different relationship.
For sure. And I'll tell you, as a father, you truly do start to appreciate your parents' points of view a lot more. Like as a father now, I want to be that provider and protector for my children, right? And for my whole family. And that's the masculine role that we've talked about. But I also, over and above that, want to be the playful father. I want to be the adventurer. I want to be the nurturer as well. But there's definitely like a primal instinct to provide and protect as a father in my family. And now, granted, I've got my 4-year-old and my 2-year-old, but I've also got my 18-year-old niece living with us.
Right.
And she's probably like, now that she's living with us, she's probably like, and as a matter of fact, Ryan Sen, he's my 18-year-old niece's stepfather, and basically really more so the father. Anyway, but he's here with us today. Anyway, she's living with us, and she knew me before she lived in the house as John the uncle, right? But now I feel almost as though I've taken on a fatherhood role with her living in the house, and I want to protect her as an 18-year-old. I want to make sure she's getting to and from work. I want to make sure she's safe getting to and from work. I want to make sure she's getting to and from school. But I'm also like, I'm telling her, hey, you need to clean up. You need to do this. You need to do that. And she's probably like, wow, you're not the cool uncle that I remember. You're kind of an a-hole. but it's the role that you kind of take on as a father.
Right.
I feel that I'm actually learning a lot having my 18-year-old niece live with us. I'm learning a ton. That's going to make me a better father for my 4-year-old and my 2-year-old when they're older as well.
Well, and also, I think, John, let me just jump in. I'm sorry, but you're also doing this for her when you're like, hey, clean up your room, make your bed, do your dishes, right? Like you're doing this for her. I mean, there's
Exactly.
there's again, I'm not a father yet, but there's a firmness that needs to take place, through coaching and fathering and that sort of thing, right? But also that sense of compassion as well, and then you find that yin and yang balance, and also at the same time, you're looking out for the rest of your family, John. You know what I mean? Like you can't have one, weak link in the chain, right? Everyone's got to kind of be on board in order to create like a real home, like a home that is harmonious, where everyone could be themselves, and which brings out more joy and all the wonderful things that a family can be. So like, good on you.
Absolutely.
I know you know this, but I'm just like kind of reiterating for the audience, because those things are necessary. Structure is important, in anybody's life, and especially, as you're growing up, structure is going to help you. Like, I love that idea of within discipline, there's freedom, right? And it's like, if you have discipline where you're like, I make my bed, I don't have to make my bed every day, John, but I do, right? My mom, I didn't make it when I was a kid, or I fought my mom all the time, but it's like, but I have now my mind is more free because things are more organized. So, but that's kind of another topic, but.
No, absolutely. And add that to the list for future topics, man. I love it. But you're spot on. And you hit the compassion piece again. Something that I talk with my 18-year-old niece that's living with us is, hey, when we do have a chance to talk, because she's super busy, she's going to school and working. And when we see one another, I'm like, I don't just beat her up about, hey, do your dishes, do this. I'm like, hey, what is difficult about this for you, right? So I want to understand her point of view before I jump onto the kind of the strict and structured robot or fatherhood role. She does. She tells me, she's like, hey, you know what? This is a new experience for me. I've never lived away from home. I've never lived outside of my house. I've never lived outside of my city, which, when I say city, I use that term loosely. It's a kind of a large town. I don't know, 35, 40,000 people.
That's exactly what my town is. Yeah. Same kind of thing. Yeah. Small.
So, so she's going through all these experiences too, like new culture, new home, new city, new job, new school, a lot of this. And I have to be compassionate to that. The whole reason I tell you all that is understanding as a father, your child's point of view, and having to look through their eyes and see what it is they're experiencing. I think that's critical in fatherhood. As a matter of fact, really quick, while I'm talking compassion and emotional intelligence, I want to give a plug.
Keep flowing, brother.
Yeah. So this is something, Teresa Larson, a good friend of ours, and the head of the 21-day mindfulness experience that we're doing together, you and me, Will.
Plug it.
She sent this to me, or at least identified it to me, called Ninja Life Hacks. And it's all about developing emotional intelligence in kids. So this box has 7 or 8 little books in it. I'll pull one of them out here. This one's Inventor Ninja. All right. This one is Angry Ninja. And it talks about what being angry is about, what that looks like. It's a phenomenal little series. So Ninja Life Hacks, highly suggest for any, I won't just say father, any parent trying to teach their kids about compassion. Well,
let me ask you, John, why is emotional literacy important, emotional intelligence in kids? Like, why? Like, let's why is that?
Yeah, well, I think it's important for a huge number of reasons. One, you understand where your parents are coming from, but 2, you also understand where your friends are coming from, why it is they're experiencing, and then you can be supportive and compassionate to your friends, your classmates. I mean, my little girl's 4, right? And she had another little girl come up to her in class the other day and say, "I don't like your hair." And she came home really sad about that. And that hurt my feelings. Like, my little daughter, to me, she's the most beautiful thing in the world, right? And to hear some other 4-year-old had come up to her and said, "I don't like your hair." And that, sure, okay, the fact that she said it, that's not that bad. But the fact that my daughter was hurt by it, That hurt my feelings. And the initial instinct was, I'm going to go tell that other 4-year-old little girl about her hair, which is ludicrous, first of all. But
I'm going to go Navy SEAL on her ass.
Yeah, exactly, right. But my wife and I sat her down and we're like, okay, why do you think she said that? And she was like, because she doesn't like my hair. And I was like, well, maybe she's sad because your hair is pretty and she was having a bad hair day as a 4-year-old. I don't know. And then I said, well, maybe she's upset because somebody has told her that same thing. And we said, you know what, tomorrow, tell her I still want to be friends with you. And she did that. My 4-year-old did that.
Wow.
Hey, like she went up to her in class. At least this is reported. I mean, this is what my 4-year-old is telling me. My 4-year-old said, went up to the other girl and said, hey, I still want to be friends with you. And they played together. And you know, all that stuff is behind them. So I think emotional intelligence, teaching them at a young age, allows them to be effective and functioning adults in society and leaders in society later. So it's important to teach those emotional intelligence, the emotional recognition of what others are going through. And then, and, I mean, it comes full circle. I don't know how many times we can say the word compassion in one episode, but it helps to develop that compassion.
I don't think we could say it enough, John, on this show.
Let's just say it 100 times. Go.
We probably will by the end of the episode. But also it's like, so not just, but it starts with the self too. Because I can understand anger and jealousy and all these other feelings that we all have on the inside. And therefore, so if there is a moment where, you know, so just imagine like maybe a few years from now, same thing kind of happens. Like, you know, it's like, oh, I don't like your dress. You know, if someone says your daughter, your daughter, instead of being like, oh my God, like, you know, and just getting all upset about it in some ways, can be like, oh, wait, well, maybe she's just having a bad day. That has nothing to do with me, right? And how powerful is that? Like she's not being affected in her day, in her schoolwork. It's not have this ripple effect. It's not she's not even bringing it home because it's rolling off her like Teflon. Yep. So it's so important. I mean, amazing. I'm so glad Teresa has brought this thing. This what's it called? Ninja Life Hacks.
Yeah.
And
I see Lindsay put that in the comments.
Yeah, Lindsay.
Like, if you're curious. So
thank you, Lindsay.
So I also want to talk about kind of shifting subjects a little bit. I mean, still on mindful fatherhood.
Yeah.
Is specifically how mindfulness has changed my relationship with my children. We talked about my relationship with my father. We talked about that with your father. This is actually something I tell quite often in my teaching of mindfulness, is when I noticed that mindfulness had shifted my perspective on things. And I think we've even talked about it on the show before, but I want to reiterate. When my daughter was born, she was, 3-4 weeks old, in the middle of the night, a baby getting up crying. And I would go through to feed her when it was my turn and give her bottle. And what I was thinking about as I'm holding this beautiful little miracle in my hands was what I had screwed up the day before or the week before, or what I had to do at work the following day or the next week. And I would kind of stew on all that as I'm feeding this baby girl. And then I would go and lay in my bed, and rather than falling back asleep, I had spun myself up into a kind of a frenzy. And so I would just lay there and get terrible sleep the next few hours. When I started practicing mindfulness, now she's like, 3 months old. And I go through to give her a bottle. Excuse me. I go through to give her a bottle. And what I was focused on was her in that moment, her beautiful little miracle in my hands, reaching up and grabbing my hands, making the little noises that she's making, hearing her breathing in the middle of the night because it's dark. And that's what I was focused on. I didn't care about what I had screwed up the day before or the week before. I wasn't thinking about that or what was coming the next day at work. And then I would go back to bed after putting her back down in her crib. I'd go back to bed and I would fall back asleep. Wow. So the mindfulness changed my presence and my ability to enjoy that present moment with my daughter, that now is 4 years old. And, before I know it, I'm going to blink and she's going to be that 18-year-old niece living somewhere else. And if I don't live in the moment and enjoy that moment, it's truly going to feel as though it's passed me by. So I have to enjoy those moments and really cherish those moments. Otherwise, life passes you by. So,
yeah. Well, I think then why don't that kind of like brings me segues, or I want to segue into what gets in the way of being more present in parenting or even in relationships, but definitely parenting, right? And what can we do about it? And you mentioned technology earlier. Yeah. And, we're reading this. I was reading actually an article, I think, in the Huffington Post. I think it's here, and I think it could be, and we can talk about, I think I don't have any kids. Like, I'm just here alone, so, but like having rituals where it's like, in the morning, say everyone, they talked in this article, everyone's getting ready for school and rushing around. And they also talked about in the evening, it's like, no technology, for a certain amount of time, so you can be present as a family, right? Yeah. Which is like, I think really, that's like, because the technology is just kind of dividing us, ripping us apart in some ways. Because and then we're not only just a distraction, but what's coming through that screen is like trying to always tell us, who we're not and who we should be, right? Yeah. Which creates a lot of stress, creates a lot of anxiety, changes relationships. You know what I'm saying, right? And so, and here's your daughter. I mean, I love that you opened up with this mindful moment. She's like pulling your phone away. Daddy, play with me. Right. And I think that's like, and that's just such a great, moment. It's like, and that play with me could be anything. Daddy, listen to me. Daddy, it's like, I need your help, instead of like missing those moments because, we're texting back and forth, John, like nonstop.
Right. Stop texting me, Will.
Okay. I'm sorry, John. All right, Jesus. But you just tell me the boundaries and I'll follow them. Okay.
But honestly, I mean, also there, what's the impulse or the thought in my mind is when I receive a text that I need to respond back instantly, which is not true at all. Like, I know you are on the other side of the country, texted me. You are truly not expecting a text back in the next 3 seconds. No, I could delay that response, right? There is nothing so urgent between so many of us in this world that we have to be on our phones or on some form of technology all the time. And my daughter and both my son and daughter go to preschool, and I pick them up 4:45, 5 o'clock, and they're normally in bed by 8. So that's 3 hours in the evening, right? 3 hours that I get to play with them, get to spend with them. Can I completely sign off for 3 hours? Hell yeah, I can. Absolutely, I can. But in my mind, I tell myself, oh, I have to stay connected to the various entrepreneurial things that I'm plugged into. But none of that is going to fail because I'm putting my phone away for 3 hours. None of it is going to fail for that. And that is, adult FOMO, fear of missing out. I've got a friend, Seth Hickerson, that I work with at My State of Mind.
Yeah. I talked to Seth. I love that guy.
He's great.
What a
fantastic
guy. What a guy. Right? What a guy.
We'll have him on the show at some point. Yes, but he has the acronym for adults rather than FOMO is FOGIT, FOGIT, fear of getting in trouble. As though like we feel that we're going to get in trouble from our boss or our colleagues, our coworkers, if we don't respond to them instantly. And we have to draw those lines. There has to be a division. There has to be almost a blessing to, like, as a boss, as a leader, you need to tell your people, hey, my expectation of you is not to respond to emails at 7 p.m., 8 p.m., 9 p.m., at night. My expectations of you are to respond to work when you're at work and have some type of clear boundaries there. We could go on to that all day long. That's another whole conversation, but there's definitely distractions there. But you're also right. In a lot of the time that you're connected to your phone, you're connected to social media. And a lot of that time when you're on social media, it literally chemically affects your body. So you're releasing the inverse. So you don't have the dopamine, the oxytocin, the serotonin that you get from in-person relationships, right? You get the all the cortisol and the adrenaline, and you get all the negative,
the sympathetic nervous system hormones, right? That
exactly.
begin to jack us up. Life is a threat. Like
Right.
you know, I gotta like defend. I get easily frustrated, right? I'm in my I'm jacked up. I'm in, really jacked up, and like, oh my god. And I want to also mention if someone really demands your time like that, John, right? That you need to reply instantly, then you might want to think about that relationship again.
Right. Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Or have a conversation.
Yes, thank you. That's probably better. That's compassion.
Yeah.
Thank you, John. I'll say it again.
Well, just setting those
Instead of being like,
expectations.
F this guy.
Yeah, just set expectations, set those boundaries, and maybe have some way of hey, if something is truly urgent, then you can get to me on I've got my phone to where I have the driving feature. I've changed the wording to the driving feature so that if I receive a text when the driving do not disturb is turned on, it doesn't say, hey, I'm driving. It says, I'm either with my family or I'm focused on something other than my phone. And if it's and then it says, if it's urgent, reply with urgent. And then my phone will ding, even in the do not disturb mode. So,
sweet.
Maybe that's another little trick that people can employ for getting off of their phones, but still being tied to work if they absolutely need to do that. So absolutely. I also want to go down another path in being a father. A lot of the time, going back into those roles of provider, protector, conqueror, we neglect ourselves. We neglect our own physical health. We neglect our own mental health because we're putting others as a priority. We're putting I believe that we should still do that. I still believe that we should put our families as a priority.
Somewhere.
Yeah, there's a balance, right? But I also feel that you should make yourself a very high priority, if not number one, because if you can't take care of yourself, you're going to not be able to take care of your kids. It's that old the oxygen mask in the airplane analogy, right? Hey, if you don't put the gas mask on yourself first, then you're not going to be able to oxygen mask. You don't put the oxygen mask on yourself first, then you're not going to be able to put it on your kids. So it's just like that. If you don't take care of your own mental health, then you're going to be a mental wreck at home. If you don't take care of your physical health, you're going to be a mental wreck at home. So you have to take care of yourself there. And in order to do that, you have to be mindful of where you're putting yourself in that priority stack. So I wanted to make sure we talk about that.
Well, what are some of the things that you do in that regard, John? I mean, you're a father, you're having a third kid on the way, so what does that look like? I mean, this is like sharing with our audience, what does that look like for you? Like, what is the structure? What are the things you do, please?
Well, I will admit my physical side has dropped off fairly significantly, and I'm going to make. I've told my beautiful bride that next week I'm kicking it back in. I'm getting back into the gym, and I'm going to start eating better again. And there's always that someday thing. You know what? Now that I'm doing this show, I'm doing it today. I'm doing it today. Forget that someday thing. I'm going to do it today. Yeah. So
nice, John.
But the other side is I wake up early before the kids do, before my wife does, before the whole house starts to wake up. I say house because we've got dogs, we've got horses, we've got chickens. It's truly it is a literal farm out there. But I wake up early, like somewhere between 4:30 and 5:30 every morning, so that I can have some quiet time by myself. I intentionally do some Bible study. I've actually tied up with a friend who I do Bible study with, and that's for me mentally and spiritually. Then I'll do a meditation somewhere between 15 and 20 minutes every morning, and then I have my coffee and I just sit there in silence for a minute to just set myself up for success for the day. Otherwise, I feel like a fellow SEAL, also Academy grad, friend of mine, Rob Brinzer. He says that if he doesn't have that quiet time in the morning, he feels like he's getting shot out of a cannon right off the bat. And is that any way to go through your day? I mean, if you feel like you're getting shot out of a cannon first thing, the rest of your day is a mess because you're playing catch up or you're trying to calm yourself back down. If you start off calm, you're going to be better throughout the day. It's a fact. You're going to be more focused. You're going to be more present. You're going to be more compassionate. How many times is that for the episode? 67.
I count 68, John. I think you're off.
Well, have some compassion, man. Anyway,
I'm sorry. Okay, 69 or maybe 68. I don't know.
Anyway, so that's what I do for my morning routine, and now I've got to get back into implementing some physical side to that. Implementing some yoga, like Dan Nevins came on, 3 or 4 episodes ago, and talked about how that is part of his morning routine and how important
even just
that is.
15 minutes.
Yeah. So that's that.
Well, I think 2 things I want to say on that. To any fathers listening out there that don't have this routine or having trouble getting the routine, and we mentioned is like, get it. Maybe have another father that get an accountability buddy, get an accountability father, and be like, hey, all right. Can we stick to 30 minutes, right? You know what I mean? Create discipline, this is the way Lindsay and I teach these companies to really get deeper into mindfulness. We have an accountability system we try to put in place. You know what I mean?
Nice.
And so if you're like, because I know, John, if like we were doing something together and we were in it, we are doing something together, but like have an accountability structure in the sense of like, okay, hey, what are you sticking to? Right. And then like texting in the morning or the night before and be like, hey, you're going to do your workout. Are you going to go for that run? Or you're going to meditate. Right. That is definitely going to up your game, like tremendously amount of success. Another thing I want to say is like how much of a better father and husband and chicken feeder are you when you are grounded? You know what I mean? Like, and then also how are you leading your children and what are you showing them? Right. By putting the mask on yourself first, right? And taking care of your own needs, right? To be able to show up more presently for your family. They don't know all these things. Like they're just kids, right? But and what are they learning? I think that's something I have in the notes here. It's like, how in fatherhood, like, if you're stressed out, you're on technology all the time, angry, frustrated, running around raging like a lunatic all the time in your house, angry and yelling at everybody. It's like, that's what your kids are learning. And that's what we're going to do out in the world. Right. So how, they're sponges. I mean, unbelievable. Like, I mean, my 3 brothers and I, like my 2 brothers and I, and we're very different people. We talk exactly the same. Like, that's how, like, I use that as an example of the sponge. It's like, we have the same cadence, the same tact in some ways. Like if I put you in the phone to one of my brothers, John, you'd be like, is this Will or is this someone else? So like using that, it's like, so like, let's talk about that a little bit. Like if you're showing up more mindfully, more calm, more conscious, more compassionate, hit it again, John. Like that's like, how are your kids going to be in the world?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, they are that sponge, and that old saying, do what I say, not what I do. How well does that work out? It never works. People see you as an example, and they're going to follow your role. Right. Yeah. Right. They're going to follow your role. They're going to follow your lead as parents. They're going to end up doing a lot of the same things that you do. So it's, I think, living mindfully, practicing meditation. If they see that, if they see you starting the day off by being calm, then they're going to be calm. If you get shot out of the cannon and you go into their room, granted, okay, I'm speaking as a father of a 4-year-old and a 2-year-old. So my perspective is probably slightly different than fathers of 18, 15-year-olds, but there's some commonalities. So I guess where I'm going is if I get shot out of that cannon and I'm all amped up, my sympathetic, the fight, flight, or freeze nervous system is in full swing. When I go into my little 4-year-old's bedroom or my 2-year-old's bedroom, they're going to be amped up. They're going to feel that energy. Not only are they going to see it and model it, but they're going to feel that energy. So I think it's critical. And then the other piece, as they get older, and going back to, my 18-year-old niece, something that we're trying to make sure is that they are very aware of who they're surrounding themselves with, their friends, what their friends are like, what their friends are doing, making sure that they're not surrounding themselves with people who are going to take them down a bad path. And I think that by teaching our children, so living mindfully is fantastic, but teaching them either by example or actively to live mindfully and practice meditation, then they can be more aware of who they're surrounding themselves with. They can be more aware of what path they're going down because of the friends they're surrounding themselves with. So I think that's important as well.
Yeah.
And when I talked about living mindfully, but I also talked about actively teaching meditation, I'm going to take another opportunity to make a couple more plugs here, man.
Go for it, man.
I brought in all these props today. I want to make sure I get them all in. So this is another great series. This book is called "The Elephant Who Tried to Tiptoe," "The Fish Who Searched for the Fish Who Searched for Water," "The Hug Who Got Stuck," and "The Dad Who Didn't Know." And they're all published by the Conscious Bedtime Story Club. And
there you go.
Yeah, each book, each story starts off with, I don't know if you can see that, snuggle breathing. And you go through, hey, I breathe for me.
That's so adorable.
For you. Yeah. And then at the end of every book, there's like another meditation or explanation. So those are powerful ones. To actively teach meditation. Another couple ones, sitting still like a frog and breathe like a bear. Those are great ones. And then if you don't have the time to read a book, there's this whole man. I live and breathe this stuff. No joke. I didn't just
obviously. I want to do the bear breath, John. I want to learn the bear breath. Yeah.
Hey, well, maybe we'll do one of these things. So this is a set of cards called Imagine meditation cards for kids, and it starts with a breathing exercise that you do together, and then it has a whole bunch of different meditations. So this one is the singing birds. This one is the healing hands. And you can read those with your kids and really teach them not just living mindfully, but the act of meditating, taking an intentional pause to meditate. And that's the end of my plugs there. But I think these ones are phenomenal. And I mean, even if you don't have kids, if you're wanting to meditate without your phone, I mean, so many of us have guided meditations, right? That we download an app. And I support that. I mean, I've got some meditations that I've recorded for some of these apps.
Yeah, same.
But if you don't want to have your phone because it's a distraction, then potentially these cards, some of these books, you could use yourself. So going back to that beginner's mindset, acting like a child, right? Hey,
right.
There's no shame in buying meditation cards that are made for kids and then using them yourself.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think, look, I think it's, I think one thing I want to say, John, it's like, cause you mentioned earlier, like when my kids are younger, so it's like, it might be a little easier to kind of implement or kind of jump in because, they're just younger kids, or like bring mindfulness into the family. But I had a thought, like, if it's like, if your kids are older, like say they're young teens or tweening or something like that, and you want to implement mindfulness into the family, right? It's like, so where does that start? And it could just be, again, coming back to another one of our principles on Men Talking Mindfulness, it seems like, is like vulnerability, and just going to your 13, 14-year-old son or daughter and be like, look, daddy needs your help. Like, I just want to actually have a better morning, and I'm wondering if you can help me, and just jumping right in and be like, look, because I want to be calmer. I want our house to be more calm. So maybe we can do this together, and maybe we can work and you have an accountability kind of system with the kids or something like that. So you have more of this harmonious, or maybe you begin to set those boundaries around technology. So it can really start. And again, it's just getting vulnerable, being authentic with where you are, being mindful of those things, and then having a plan and asking the family, right, to put that plan in place. And there's going to be struggles. You're going to want to go back to your old habits of doing things. But like, do you make a contract? You put that contract in the refrigerator and saying like, hey, hey, we talked about we're going to do this on Wednesdays. Like, so let's do that together. Or we talked about we're going to have this 30 minutes of no tech, and we're just going to talk about what we're excited for the day or something like that. So there's all these opportunities of from vulnerability and authenticity and communicating in a very clear way and being very intentional about the things that you want to bring into the family in that regard, that there's opportunities everywhere that you can implement mindfulness regardless of how old your children are.
Right. And you just have to be mindful of where you can implement mindfulness. I mean, if you're not paying attention, if you're continually sucked into your phone, social media, tech, whatever, you're not going to miss you are going to miss those moments. You're going to miss the moments that you could be mindful and teaching mindfulness to your children.
Yeah.
Well, man, we're coming up on an hour. This show has flown by, and there's just so much. And I know we've got a twist for the audience here.
We do? What do you mean, John? We have a twist? I don't, what are you telling?
Season finale. Today, season finale, but we're going to go ahead and continue talking for another hour or so. But it's going to be on a season recap. And then this from here is going to roll into a separate podcast episode. But for the show today, we're just going to keep rolling because we would do another whole episode next week. But baby number 3 for me, where my wife, us, is due very soon. And we don't want to delay this. So we're going to end season 2 today here on video, but continue with season 2 another week past this on the podcast form. So before we get into that, do you want to do one of our closing practices, Will? And then we'll transition into the second part of today's episode.
We have a part 2, John. This is awesome. This is awesome. Okay, so all right, we're gonna close with another grounding practice, and this is something you can do with your kids. This is something so simple that you can do with regardless of how old your kids are, or with your family, or by yourself wherever you are. So find that seat again. Maybe sit a little bit differently if you want to stand up, or if you're walking around listening on podcast or whatever, or if you're driving in your car, this will work too. And we're just going to do a very simple triangular breath just to help ground us. 3 parts. Right, we're going to do 5 rounds. We're going to inhale for 5 seconds, hold that breath for 5 seconds, exhale slowly for 5. We're going to repeat that triangle 5 times. So get to your seat, find that seat if you're sitting, and ground your feet, or make contact with your hands, or bring a hand on your belly, your hand on your chest, just to make some more contact with yourself, so you really get to know that you are here and now, and it's the only time it ever is. And we'll just start with a nice little exhale, eyes open to close, your choice. Let it go out the breath. Great. And as big as breath you can, take a big inhale for 5, but slowly. Inhale 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Holding 5, 4, 3, 2. Exhale easy. 5 through the nose. 3, 2, 1. And keep going. Inhale 5. Hold. Exhale 5. Oh, I think I messed that up. That's okay. Good. Here we go. Inhale 5. Hold that breath for 5. Exhale 5. Keep going. Do a few more rounds. Inhale for 5. Holding. Exhale 5. Good. 2 more. See if you can drop the breath in the belly as you inhale for 5. And then fill into the middle of the chest, all the way to the top of the chest, and then hold that big balloon in your torso for 5. Exhale slowly through the nose. 5. Very easy through the nose. 3, 2, 1. Last round. Inhale 5. Holding gently. Exhale 5. Good. And just bring both hands over top of your chest for a second, and just take a moment and just check in emotionally. Just again, coming back to this emotional literacy, emotional intelligence. And part of that practice is just checking in how you're feeling right now. No judgment. Just be with what is. And just take a moment of gratitude and thank yourself for listening and showing up today for this podcast. John and I really appreciate it. And we'll finish with one big giant breath in. And gently exhale, however you like. Awesome. Beautiful. Thank you, John. Thank you, everybody, who's out there.
Yeah.
I think what's happening next, John? I feel like you're going to surprise me.
I do, man. I meant to mention this book specifically ties in directly to what we discussed. First of all, thank you for that grounding practice. That was fantastic, man. And even if you did screw up a little bit, hey, compassion, grace, hey, it was perfect. It was exactly what it needed to be when it needed to be. So
thank you.
This book is called The Dad Who Didn't Know, and it's also part of that conscious bedtime story club. But it ties in specifically because this father in the story thinks that he needs to know everything, and he starts beating himself up for not knowing some stuff, and goes into a deep depression, and then realizes, this ties back into that self-compassion that you finished that meditation with. He realizes, you know what? I don't need to know everything. I am a father, and I love my children, and that's what I need to know as a father. Anyway, I thought that was a great one, and I meant to mention it specifically, or call it out specifically. And thanks for just giving me a second to do that.
No,
but
absolutely.
yeah, as we wrap up this show, we're going to continue here on the video. But as we wrap up this show, I just want to again thank the audience today. Thank the listeners for the podcast. And then if you like what Will and I are doing, please go down the Apple Podcasts and give us a shout out, give us a review, give us a rating. We'd love that. And it really does mean a lot to us. It helps us to really promote the show as well. So that's that. Unless you
hit up our
else.
Facebook, mentalkingmindfulness.com. We have a Facebook group as well, Men Talking Mindfulness. So thank you for being part of this community. And we try to be as active as we can. And being responsible as well with our responsibilities, and not getting tied too much in tech. But so thanks again, John, for another, I felt it was an excellent show once again. Thanks.
Yeah, brother. And as we roll into the second half of this show, this is going to be a little bit different than how we normally kick off the show. We normally kick it off with our intro music, our intro slide. This one, again, also ties into fatherhood. As a father, I drive around in a minivan these days. I've made that transition, and it has a DVD player in the back, and it constantly, we have this one movie playing called Captain Underpants, and it's ridiculous. It's ludicrous, but it's also hilarious. But as a father, you're not watching the DVD, right? You're watching the road, and you just hear this show playing in the background the whole time. And during the show, or rather at the end in the credits, there's a song called A Friend Like You by Andy Grammer. And I'm going to make sure I call it out so that we don't get any copyright infringement here. But A Friend Like You by Andy Grammer as part of the movie Captain Underpants. And it talks about loving one another and loving your friend, and specifically as a man saying I love you to another man. I love you, bro. I love you, man. So here we go. We're going to kick it off with Captain Underpants and that song.
Right from the start, couldn't pull us apart. It just works.
It's like the best friend ever. It just works.
Nobody else ever gets me as well on this earth.
There's nobody else here.
Like rock and roll, Marshalls and jellies, mac and cheese, PBs and jellies. Some things are better together, and that's you and me. And dude, I love you, bro, I love you, man, I love you. You're my brother from another mother. You are my favorite. I'm not ashamed to admit, 'cause I do. Dude, I love you, bro, I love you, man, I love you. You're my homie, no one knows me like you know me.
Boy, that brings a smile to my face, John.
It really does,
awesome.
man. That song gets stuck in my head because it plays in the back of that van all day. But like I sent it to you a couple weeks back, and I was like, dude, this is how I feel about you. This is how I feel about the show. And then we just texted back and forth. We're like, we have to bring this on the show. So hope everyone gives us some grace and allows us to be fun and childish for a minute there. But hey, today, Men Talking Mindfulness, again, part 2 to the same show, but a separate podcast episode. So I'll just reintroduce John McCaskill here in Colorado Springs with my brother from another mother, Will Schneider, there in New York City. And we are Men Talking Mindfulness. And today is an epic season 2 recap. I mean, we're so thrilled with where we have come in season 2, and we've had so much fun. There's been a ton of growth. There's been a ton of openness from us and from our guests, those who have actually come on the show, and then also for our audience in the chat that we've seen. It's just been amazing, and really
a ton
really
of learning too. My God,
a ton of learning.
Learned so much this year. Yeah,
like my mind is just blowing every time we read a new book for the show. Every time we bring a new guest on. Every time we just do a show, I learn so much. Again, from you, Will, from our guests, and then from the audience in the chat as well. So I see a dramatic drop in our listenership watching just since we kicked off with Captain Underpants. Hey, but whatever, we're here to have fun.
It's all good, exactly.
So yeah, with that song, man, Will, I've got to express my love for you, brother. I really appreciate you and everything that you've done to bring Men Talking Mindfulness to the masses, if you will, and what it is we're doing together. And I just love everything that we're doing. So thank you, Will. That's that.
Yeah, and right back at you, John. No, thank you, John. Like we do this together. I mean, really do this together. I mean, it's been not just awesome to see the show grow and the community grow and our consciousness around mindfulness and masculinity grow, but our friendship grow, John. Like that's what I've really been appreciating, the amount of love and respect and trust that we have from one another. And I'm getting a little I'm getting a little emotional, John. It's like really, yeah, I know, it's all good. I mean, hey, we're okay to do that on this show, John.
That's right. That's right.
One thing we got to practice
authentic. That's exactly right, man.
Yeah.
And then yeah, man, my pleasure. And it's just an honor to be on this journey with you. And then an honor to be on this journey with our audience and with our guests. I mean, since the start of the show, we started on Instagram Live, and we're circling back to Instagram Live. We're gonna be here on LinkedIn. We're gonna be here on Facebook. We're on YouTube, multiple Facebook accounts, multiple YouTube accounts. And I believe we're on Instagram Live now again. So we've come full circle. But additionally, we've got the website. Since season 2 started, we've got a website. We've got the Facebook group. We've got a LinkedIn and Instagram page. And now we have our official YouTube page. So and then the podcast itself is on multiple platforms now. The obvious ones being Apple, Spotify, and Google. But we've also opened up to iHeartRadio, Amazon, Stitcher, and Pandora. And then we have a long-term vision. Long-term vision does change, but the long-term vision is ultimately to transcribe parts of the show and put out multiple books to, again, open up what mindfulness is to men, or those who love men, those who work with men, those who live with men, whatever. Who's just about everyone's, right? So
you can't escape us, John. You can't escape men.
That's right. You can't escape Men Talking Mindfulness, and then
or just men in general. You just can't. Like, we're everywhere.
That's true.
We seem to be everywhere, right? Just kidding.
Right. And then hopefully we'll be doing Men Talking Mindfulness leadership and mindfulness retreats, long-term goals, and I want to speak that into existence by putting it out there into the universe. So we're going to be affecting more and more people. So none of that would have been possible without the audience who watches, who listens. So we love you guys, and I want to express that love openly to you all as well. So, Will, what have we learned this season, man? What have we done?
We've learned a lot about masculinity. I felt so much about, like we had Liz Plank on, which she definitely ruffled some feathers, which I really appreciated with her. Then we had Ed and Ed, and I think it actually helped us to communicate more effectively to men, John. Like, for sure, it's helped me. Like, I mean, I'm able to and through the show I'm talking about, also in my life, I get to understand men in a different way. accept them even on deeper level, accept them on a deeper level because of the growing consciousness that I've had from our conversations, from all these great guests we've had on, from the books that we're reading, and from the things we're continually discovering on the show and communicating on the show. We constantly are coming back to, again, compassion, vulnerability, authenticity, patience, listening, all humility, all these wonderful values that are typically not rewarded, and we have several episodes that we talked about, and every episode we probably talked about one of those or all of those things. And gratitude is another one that we had talked about as well. A big shout out for gratitude, and it's like I don't know, I feel more confident even as a teacher, John. I teach all the time, but when I'm hanging out with more men and in my world here in New York City, like, more men are reaching out to me and be like, hey, like, I just picked up a mindfulness student this week. He's like, hey, I've tried therapy. I've tried this, tried that. It's like, I know you can help me with mindfulness. So, and it's like, and just so much love, John, for our effort. And it's really, we don't have a podcast if we don't have an audience. Right? That just doesn't exist. So without all your comments, your feedbacks, your likes, and all the, and keeping us, real, it's like, it's just been such a tremendous gift, John, and I cannot be more grateful and more appreciative and just more loving in this moment because of where season 2 has taken us. And like you mentioned earlier, John, that vision forward just looks so grand and so great. And you just think of all the people, we have a nice audience now that we're working with. Imagine a year, 2, 3 years from now. And even people, when they go back and listen to this episode, just so much thanks. And we are working, John and I are definitely working to fulfill the vision that we're talking about right here, right now. And we ask you to hold us to that. So thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we were talking about accountability partners earlier in the previous episode, that accountability partners, we have you as an audience to hold us accountable to continuing this show, continuing doing what we're doing with the show, and then outside of the show, in continuing to share mindfulness with just about anyone who will listen. Right? We want to share it with anyone. It's just because it's men talking mindfulness, that doesn't mean we're only talking to men. It's just it's named after two men sitting around talking about mindfulness, but it's not. We don't only address men's issues, right? I've had a couple of people say that they've snuck into the men's locker room, and that this show is their guilty pleasure because they're a woman watching the show. We love our women listeners and viewers because it's not us just talking about men's issues or men's challenges or men's topics. It's just two men talking about mindfulness and anything that is connected to mindfulness. So we love our audience. And we have learned a ton that is making us better men, better, myself as a better husband, a better father. And Will, you talked about what it is you're doing as a better mindfulness teacher. You're becoming more confident. So not only we as the hosts for the show, but ideally all our listeners are experiencing that same learning. They're learning the same things we are. So definitely. Well, I'll tell you, in the 20 episodes, we've covered a lot. I'll just touch on a few things and then we can maybe go into some of our favorite topics. So because at the beginning of season 2, we migrated from Instagram Live to LinkedIn Live. And then since then, we've kind of expanded to a whole different bunch of platforms. But at the beginning of season 2, we reintroduced ourselves. So that was, hey, who we are, why we are teaching mindfulness. And maybe we can wrap up season 2 with a little bit of that, just in case some folks haven't heard that before. But we did that. We went through toxic masculinity in the man box. And that term toxic masculinity, that does not mean masculinity is in and of itself toxic. But aspects of it can be toxic if you're forcing it on others, and that's another aspect of toxic masculinity and the show that we talked about. We talked about weaving mindfulness into your busy day, authenticity, compassion, and empathy. You hear Will and I say those 3 words probably 30 times each per show. So those are big ones. High performance hacks. We talked about the love of men, Liz Plank's book. We actually did 3 separate episodes on that. We did 2 separate episodes on reinventing masculinity with Ed Frauenheim and Ed Adams, bosses versus leaders, equanimity versus impulsivity, gratitude. The list goes on. But Will, I would love to know what some of your favorite moments were in this season.
I think so. The one that comes to mind first, John, is like how we just pissed off some men about this toxic masculinity and started waking some men up, and and I think it was kind of very funny and very telling that men are commenting and kind of trying to like rag on us about like being weaker men and this and that and blah blah blah, but they're still listening and they're still commenting and they're still engaging, which I think is really funny. So there's something there. That
reinforcing toxic masculinity.
Yeah, exactly. Thank you very much. Right. So, I mean, I thought that was really, I kind of, I enjoyed those moments because like, if you're gonna make some, if you're gonna make some eggs, you gotta break some eggs to make a scrambled egg. Never mind, I messed that up. But but it's like, and I think it's like, and that's where we're disrupting masculinity in some ways. So other favorite moments is just having my friend Liz Plank on. Like I just love her so dearly, and she's really putting some great work in the world. She has a fabulous Instagram called Feminine Fabulous that I'll throw into this into the comments here in a moment. And then she's just such a powerhouse. She was a ton of fun. Reading Reinventing Masculinity and Liz's book were definitely two of my favorite. We started in January, January 1st we started, and here we are, what's today, the 14th of May, right?
Yeah.
And we're closing, recapping the season 2. So we've come a long, long, long journey. So reading those 2 books, and even I know we didn't have Tony Porter on yet. He sadly had to reschedule, but reading his book was awesome. I mean, reading Rhonda Mcgee's book, The Inner Work of The Inner Works of Radical Racial Justice was awesome. And then like having Ed and Ed on, and then having them really begin to break down and kind of, we opened up with toxic masculinity, and then we started to transition into, I guess, better vocabulary or better, terminology or ones that are more kind of
less inflammatory.
Acceptable. Yeah, less inflammatory. Exactly. Great. Thank you, John. That's awesome. With Confined Masculinity and Liberating Masculinity.
Right.
And I mean, Scott Tucker, like I just loved hearing his voice, having, another friend of ours, like a really good friend of mine, like Scott, big kudos to you for all the great work you're putting out there for veterans and just how much love and patience and everything that you bring into the world is really incredible. And oh my God, talking about sex on the show.
Yeah, right.
With Courtney Boyer, like that really kicked ass. But I don't want to steal all the great moments, John. But those are just the ones that just come to my top of mind. But what about yourself, John?
Oh man, I don't have anything to add. Great show, good job. No, I'm just kidding. No, man. Let's see. All those were fantastic moments. Absolutely agree on reading those books and how enlightening those were, and then having the guests of those books on the show. It really changed my perspective as a father raising a son, specifically. Obviously, there's parts that changed my perspective on raising my daughter as well, but more broadly for my son and what not to do as a father so that he can be himself and whatever that himself looks like, rather than something I'm trying to imprint on him. So Ed Frauenheim, Dr. Ed Adams, and Liz Plank, those were fantastic guests, and the books Reinventing Masculinity and For the Love of Men, absolutely top notch. Having Dan Nevins come on and his story with yoga.
Dan.
Oh yeah, I mean we had a lot of stuff, man. So it's hard to really focus on any specific favorite moments. But Dan Nevins, I mean, brought me to chills, to tears. And then I was also in stitches laughing. I mean, fantastic episode. And Dan is just a phenomenal human being with his story of overcoming adversity and not only just overcoming, but thriving as a yoga instructor and sharing his story with so many. So Dan was great. Absolutely. Courtney Boyer with sex and mindfulness. I mean, talking about being uncomfortable. I never thought in a million years that I would be on social media live discussing sex. on a show that my parents watch and listen to. Man, how awkward, but how also enlightening was that. That was fantastic. Having Scott on the show, I mean, Scott introduced the two of us to one another. How great was that to come full circle back to the guy who shared, who rather introduced us, and having him talk about scarcity versus abundance, and having how to establish that abundance mindset and how important that is, that abundance mindset. What else? Let's see. Beginner's mindset. We talked about beginner's mindset and Shoshin, and how that can help you to learn so much more because you're open to learning, rather than walking into a room thinking that you're the expert and that you know everything. And I think Ed Frauenheim called it, rather than being a know-it-all, be a learn-it-all.
Learn it all.
Yeah.
Great word.
Man, there's just so much. And then just from you personally, Will, learn. I believe I've become a better person, a better man, a better podcaster. We have evolved. Our podcast has evolved since this. I mean, we've got new audio equipment, new video equipment. It's funny to have just seen the evolution just over the past 5 months, just in the show itself. So, man, I could ramble all day, but those are some of the real high points for me that jump out.
Thanks. Yeah. Awesome. It's I mean, I just keep smiling because it's been such an incredible journey, and we didn't know where this was going to go, John. We didn't know, how this show is going to turn out. We just have a passion for the same thing, and I'm so thankful. You're the one who reached out to me, John. It was like, hey, let's do something live together.
Yeah.
And it started, and here we are, and almost 4,000 listens later, which is awesome. Yeah. We just hit yesterday our first episode of 200, right? And that was, of course, the sex episode, which only 3 weeks
Of course.
Yeah, I know, right? Dan, you're not far behind right now. Dan, you're at 195 or something like that.
196, I think.
Scott's doing really well with scarcity and abundance and power of gratitude. It's really been fun to take this journey, John. But why don't we shoot? You want to just kind of run through each episode a little bit, talk about, a few things.
Yeah.
What are you feeling might be best to do?
Yeah. Shoot, I think we've done a lot of it, man. But let's run through the 20 episodes. Why don't we do it in reverse, starting with the one that we just wrapped up, and then working our way backwards, and then wrapping it up with a reintroduction of ourselves as kind of the end of the season.
I love that. Yeah. Well, we just did mindful fatherhood, which which is it's still hot. It's still really warm, right out of the oven. And I just I didn't know how that conversation was going to go. I mean, not like it wasn't going to be good, but what was going to come out of it. And I really felt I loved when we talked about our own fathers. I mean, because I'm not a father yet. But we talked about our own fathers, which I thought was really special to me, and honor my dad in that way as well. And coming to that concept of, they're doing the best they can, know, and also that compassion was a big piece. And I really enjoyed talking about how technology, messes with our family dynamics, it messes with our relationships, it messes with ourselves, and how it jacks us up, and looking to kind of eliminate some of those things, or really, again, another principle I think that we're discovering throughout the show is boundaries, discipline. Saying no, and not being afraid to say no at certain things. I think is a real key concept here, not just for that episode, but everything as far as mindfulness goes. But
absolutely, I mean,
what are your feelings, John?
Yeah. Agree on all those, and I think that one was special to me as a relatively new father. I mean, I've got a 4-year-old and a 2-year-old, so I'm still relatively new to the game. I don't have teenagers, but those are the pride and joy of my life. My 4-year-old, 2-year-old, and number 3 on the way. I think reestablishing what it is to be mindful as a father. It's very important. As I've got number 3 on the way, I want to be a mindful father. So I think that was important. And then rolling back an episode, the inner work of racial justice with Rhonda Mcgee. I mean, what a phenomenal human being. Just she's just wonderful, and her her experiences, what she shared with us, and the RAIN method to apply RAIN, RAIN, to your everyday life, but all within your meditations, and then with responding to others' perceived slights. They may not even be intended slights, but you may perceive it as. And man, as I just said, RAIN, it escaped me what. All right, so recognize.
Yeah, I got you. Yeah,
accept. I know N is non-identified. Investigate. Thank you. Recognize. Accept. Investigate, and non-identify. That's critical to compassion. It's critical. So.
Right. Well, yeah, critical to get into the feeling world of race and getting to know like really what's going on the inside. Like, I mean, what really Rhonda helped explain so well was like, it's not necessarily, it's the thinking that surrounds our feelings, right? And sometimes these feelings are so deep embedded in us because of how we're raised or the environment we're in or where we were raised that it takes a little bit of deeper work or a lot of work in some cases to recognize those feelings, right? And accept them, know that they're there, right? But then that non-attachment and that non-identity is that big transition into a more mindful place and into and how being in the world in a different way, which is like which around race and which is just also around within your relationships too. So again, it comes back down into that, you know, the emotional content. I mean, so much of the stuff we've always talked about and so many of these episodes are getting into that emotional place, increasing your emotional literacy and your emotional intelligence, which is always just going to create more success and joy and more thriving relationships and not just with your relationships, other people, but in the things that you do in your life. So. Right.
Yep.
Beautiful.
Yep. Absolutely. And then I'll touch on one more thing from the inner work and racial justice with Rhonda Mcgee. It is specifically that the inner work of racial justice, working inwardly, looking inwardly, understanding your perspective, understanding your experiences and how they've shaped your views, and then understanding how others' experiences have shaped their views and ideals, how that inner work can help us outwardly heal. And again, you know, another piece of it that was not lost on me was that it was two white guys talking about racial justice, but having a beautiful person of color on the show to express her experiences. It was just a phenomenal show. So I can't say enough about that one. But I have to, because we've got, another 18 episodes to cover. So Sex and Mindfulness with Courtney Boyer, that was the universe just reaching out. It was crazy. I had reached out to Will and saying, hey, we should do a show on sex and mindfulness. I scoured my network and looked for a sex therapist, didn't find one anywhere. And then literally as I was looking, Courtney commented on one of our shows about how great the Men Talking Mindfulness show was. And it says in her LinkedIn profile, sex therapist. And I was like, if that's not the universe talking to me, I don't know what is.
I think she called herself a sexpert, right?
Sexpert. That's right. Sexpert.
Anyway, that was funny. I'm like, oh and God.
That was our, most popular show thus far. And, imparted some incredible wisdom there. Courtney did on implementing mindfulness in the bedroom. So that you can have a more passionate experience, a more in the moment experience, but also talking about how to deal with past negative experiences in the bedroom, past assaults, and how that can also completely change your perspective on sex and what sex is. And it was just, and then Will, man, you were just incredibly vulnerable and honest on that show, and I just loved it. So over to you.
I wanted to say, actually, I mean, I thought about the show, and like when I was like going through that time in my life when I was like overcoming my premature ejaculation, right? I was trying to get away from the whole being the 2-pump chump. You ever hear that? So,
oh yeah.
Anyway, I wanted to throw that phrase out there because I thought it was really funny. But anyway, but thank you for that, John. And that's another thing about this show, John. It's like the more we bring to our own humanity to the show, this is when things really begin to transform. And people that are listening out there, it's like, I mean, that I think I just want to make that note for everybody. Like when you show up in your full humanity with your own compassion and your own like faults, and just realize that it's just like, okay, this is just who I am. I mean, it's not even a fault. It's just like, this is like, you can work on a lot of these things through mindfulness, and not just sex, but all the things we're going to talk about today. And you can really begin to transform your own life, right? And then taking those opportunities to hack in and be like, look, I need to fix this. You'll start not only transforming yourself, but you have this rippling effect, this domino effect that you talk about in your 21-day challenge right now, right? It's like you start with one, and all of a sudden start knocking down other more. And anybody that's out there that has some things to work on, how do you reduce it down to one of the simplest things that you can possibly do, and watch how moving that one, or just pushing over that one very seemingly small domino, how it begins to cascade and trickle down all some of the biggest ones in your life. But it always starts with the small things. So
the book, The One Thing, has a really interesting graphic in it about dominoes. I mean, obviously we're talking about the domino theory and how that applies in your life and how that can change with just making one small change. But there's a graphic that shows one small domino knocking over another domino slightly bigger than it, and then another domino knocking over, slightly bigger. And eventually, if you started with a domino, just a literal domino, the normal size domino, if you could knock over a domino like the size of the Empire State Building, and then that one's going to knock over another one that's going to be like twice that size, and it's just it gets exponential. And that's the same thing. Yeah, that's a graphic depiction, but that can change exactly how you are in your life. And I know we're talking about sex and mindfulness with Courtney Boyer, that specific episode, but changing one small thing could affect your sex life. Changing one small thing could affect your physical health, your mental health. It's just it's amazing how that compounds. So
to talk about like that, just the domino in that moment in that show, it's like, I became more confident, with my sex life, which with that confidence began to ripple into how I'm showing up, everywhere else in my life, and because I was eradicating some of that guilt and shame and all this like awkwardness and stuff like that. And then I was like, oh yeah, I got this. Like this is going to be fun. And like, and how does that again translate other aspects of your life?
Right.
So,
yeah. And then just in the observing time, we've still got like another 17 episodes to go through. So I'm just going to touch on seriously the high points. So for Men in Yoga with Dan Nevins, what really struck me was just his sense of humor, but also his ability to connect at such an authentic, real, and pure way with his experience. So Dan, if you haven't watched or listened to his episode, Dan was is a U.S. Army veteran who had both of his legs amputated after an IED explosion, and now he is a yoga and mindfulness instructor. And his experience with yoga with no legs, and then when he took his prosthetics off and started doing yoga with just what he had left of his legs, and how that shot up through his body like a literal bolt of lightning and changed his perspective, not just on yoga, but on life. That really resonated with me. So that was my high point for that one.
Yeah, so I'm just going to touch really quick on that one with Dan. It's like it's just impressive that you talk about overcoming things, and just like, and I mean, he struggled, but he there's something inside of him that was like, and the support around him too, to take those big steps, and then the step on the stage with you in the yoga world as a double amputee. I mean, that sounds like absolutely crazy, but like, here he is like out there in the world and bringing more mindfulness and yoga to more, not just men, but everybody. But a great example, for men out there that think yoga is impossible, or they can't stretch because they can't touch their toes. I'm like, imagine doing yoga without any legs, or with prosthetic legs. I mean, so it's possible. It's all possible, if you unleash it in your mind to begin to see it in your mind first. So I really enjoyed Dan on the show. He was amazing.
Yeah. And then prior to that, we actually had 2 episodes, not back to back, but we had 2 episodes on bosses versus leaders, and the differences in styles of a boss versus a leader, and how the boss is very much about himself and about the bottom line, whereas the leader just distilling these 2 episodes down into like 1 minute. The leader
great.
is very much about his or her people and getting them to accomplish their goals, and ultimately in their accomplishing their goals, the team wins. So that was again distilling those down to a couple sentences. Over to you, man.
I like it. What I'll say, one more thing about that is like, I love what we just discovered in that episode. It's like, the boss stays in that sympathetic fight, flight, or freeze mode. World's a threat, defend, and then going into, whereas a leader is like listening, accepting, compassionate, open, right, and in that parasympathetic, rest and digest mode, and that's where you get more of your effective results, like being in that open space, accepting and listening, and really being patient instead of just demanding and forcing and just being an asshole, in some ways.
Right. But, and that ties directly into the previous episode on scarcity versus abundance. Scarcity with Scott Tucker, that thought that, hey, there's only enough for so many to go around about anything, and versus the abundance mindset is, hey, there's enough for everyone. And what that scarcity mindset does is you're living in a state of fear, versus the abundance mindset, you're living in kind of a state of giving and sharing and loving with everyone. And that scarcity mindset, I think, ties into who the bosses are, versus the abundance mindset ties into who the leaders are. The bosses want everyone to get something out of it, whereas the bosses, the leaders do. The leaders want everyone to get something out of it.
That I versus we, right? Yeah. We all go, right? Versus like I, me, like, I mean, it's like I, like, look at me, look what I did, like, and also then pushing blame instead of, so that I and we are a giant concept versus, and that fear is like, there's not enough, this, that, blah, blah. Abundance is like, there is more than enough to go around. I just need, again, it's my, and this is going to take us into number 12 in a second, but that mindset, and that's a big part of mindfulness is like, what is your mindset? And if you don't know what your mindset is, right, then mindfulness is going to help you to begin to discover what the mindset is and begin to change your mindset by actively practicing.
Yeah. And then prior to that, the power of gratitude, another one of our popular shows, talking about how just writing down a few things every day, or just saying something about what it is you're thankful for, what you're grateful for, how that literally rewires your brain to see more positive. That positivity bias changes you out of that negativity bias, where you see a lot of negative, where you're constantly defending yourself against these supposed threats, into having a positivity bias and seeing more good in life. So that's that.
Yeah, no, I just wanted to mention, I'm trying to look for the quote here, power of gratitude, right? The Seneca quote I thought was really powerful, if I can find it. Cicero, right? Gratitude is not only the greatest of virtues, but the parent of all others, right? That's Cicero, right? Gratitude is not only the greatest of virtues, but the parent of all others. So that's a big episode, and there's a reason you're hearing so much about gratitude, not just on our show, but everywhere else, because that's how powerful it is.
Right. Then we went, let's see, prior to that, equanimity versus impulsivity. Equanimity is being with things the way they are, and accepting that, and being in that moment. That's the, again, distilling that whole episode down into one sentence, versus trying to change everything and attacking it and living in that impulsivity state. So that was that.
Well, I think it's also like, no. I just want to say, it's like going with the flow, being in harmony, right, versus fighting the current. And that's that's like those two concepts, like very simple. It's just like you either go with the flow, accept what's going on, right, adapt and change, and do the best you can, with what your attention is, right, or maybe you'll get there tomorrow, not today, right, or whatever that looks like, figuratively, but also, and anytime you're going to fight that current, right, in that impulsivity and like trying to get the world to meet your needs, like you're always going to fail, and it's always going to be a struggle, and you're always going to be stressed out.
Yeah, right on. Exactly, man. And let's see, prior to that, beginner's mindset. We talked about that one already a little bit, but basically being open to learning, being that like a child, being curious, asking why, having that state or view of wonder and awe, and taking things in that way. That was the beginner's mindset. Over to you, man.
Vulnerability. You know, if you want to learn something, especially it's a little more challenging as adults, right? To learn new things, to learn mindfulness, to sit and meditate, you know, and it requires a lot of vulnerability. And, you know, and just by showing up and starting small, it doesn't have to be like this big, like, oh, I'm going to start running, you know, 5 miles a day and you haven't left the couch in like 5 years. Right. I mean, just starting like right, just taking a couple laps around the block to start or whatever, you know, again, figuratively, that can be many different types of things. But starting with, again, that one domino, John, that one small domino, what's it going to be that starts to knock all the others over? Right. And that's where the beginner mindset really starts, is at first. And again, the one thing, again, it might be a great book for you to get out there and read to inspire you to start making these changes.
Yeah, exactly, man. Exactly. All right. So prior to that, we had 2 episodes on reinventing masculinity with Ed Frauenheim and Dr. Ed Adams. Reinventing masculinity introduced us to that new terminology of confined masculinity versus the toxic masculinity. Confined masculinity being that, hey, a lot of the time we as men think that we can live in 3 personas, that provider, protector, and conqueror, but really there's so much more to life. And if we're limiting ourselves to those 3, we truly are confining our masculinity.
Yeah. I think we talked enough about, I mentioned that a lot earlier, but I really enjoyed having Ed and Ed on. What I'll say is get that goddamn book. I shouldn't say the words, you know, but get that book. You really want to start your journey into greater states of masculinity and begin to change yourself and therefore in your family and your community. This book is going to be an incredible, Reinventing Masculinity is an incredible resource to help you, you know, start to see your masculinity and how you are in the world in a different way, for sure.
Right. Yep, definitely. That one. And so we did Bosses versus Leaders Part 1. Prior to that, we already covered that. Liz Plank was prior to that with For the Love of Men. And she really opened up my eyes there as she talked about the toys that we make for the different genders and how, you know, it's acceptable for a little girl to play with a monster truck and a princess dress, whereas for a little boy, he can only play with that monster truck. If a little boy is seen playing with a princess doll or a doll of any kind, a lot of the time, fathers are going to slap that doll out of that kid's hand and give him a monster truck because they want him to be manly, and how that is oppressive. And that is the toxic side of masculinity, is where we try to force masculinity on others. That was really eye-opening for me.
Yeah. That was we've read that book it was well written. She's a great writer. You know, another great book. If you want to keep going down this path about masculinity and how to begin to change, it's like, it'll really wake you up. It really woke me up. I mean, I know, like, you know, I really appreciated your appreciation when I sent you the book, and then you read the book, and all of a sudden you're implementing these changes with your son. You know, him wanting to put that dress on we had talked about, which is a big moment for you, a really big moment for you.
That was eye-opening. Like, he came up to me with the Anna dress from Frozen. It was like, Anna? I was like, initially wanted to take it away from him and be like, hey, here's a monster truck or whatever. But then we were literally reading the book as that happened. And I was like, okay, I'm going to let him run around in a little princess dress. And you know what? He's no less of a little boy for that. He's still a little boy. That was great. So thank you for introducing me to that book, and to Liz. Liz was a phenomenal guest. She's just another. I keep saying about all our guests that they're wonderful human beings. They are. They're fantastic. So if you haven't listened to these
John,
episodes,
we're not going to have.
That's right.
We're not going to have weak. That's right. We're not going to have bad people on the show.
All right, so let's we'll wrap up the last 5 episodes real quick. We did high performance hacks. So we went from drinking water to getting enough sleep. And a couple of other ones in there. And then prior to that, authenticity, compassion, empathy. Again,
I just want to say one thing about high performance hacks, John.
Oh,
sorry.
Yeah, man. Sorry, man.
It's like, hey, we're going to expand on that. Like, I definitely, and John, like, we're going to bring in some more experts. We're going to talk about water. We're going to bring in somebody and talk about a whole episode on sleep. We're actually going to have, I'm really excited for breaking up with sugar, which, with Molly Carmel, one of my friends here in New York and a student of mine, and she wrote a great book. So all these so we're going to expand upon that particular topic, which I'm really excited about, because all these things have helped me, and I'm excited to bring them to you, to our audience, and help them in a deeper way.
For sure. Authenticity, compassion, and empathy. I mean, we beat those ones up all the time, so exactly. I'm not going to go into detail on that one. weaving mindfulness into your busy day. We are all super busy, and in that episode, Will and I talk about specific ways to kind of hack your schedule so that you can meditate or so that you can live mindfully. Anything on that one, Will?
No, I think it could be, that could be a good place to start for a lot of people, and also a good episode of people to come back again and again and listen.
Yeah.
Because I know when I listen to, podcasts or books or a meditation, I hear something new every time. So maybe going back and listening to that, it could be a great opportunity to continually constitute and grow in your mindfulness for sure. Yeah,
that's right. Yep. And then, toxic masculinity, which we've talked about, and unpacking that man box. And we're going to have, I'm forgetting Tony's last name, Tony
Porter.
Porter, yes, thanks.
Porter.
Tony Porter on the show eventually to talk about that man box. But on that episode, you can hear us. We have a diagram that we go through, kind of unpacking what's in that quote unquote man box. And then again, coming back full circle to who we are and why we do what we do. That was our first episode this season, reintroduction. So I'll just cover real quick who I am and what I do, and then I'll turn it over to you, Will. John McCaskill, you heard at the beginning, I'm a retired Navy SEAL commander. I'm teaching mindfulness and meditation now because of my experience in the SEAL teams. It led me to depression, anxiety, stress, survivor's guilt, all of which I didn't truly unpack or process until I finally got introduced to the practice of meditation and living mindfully. As a matter of fact, when I first got introduced to them by a counselor, I laughed in his face. And I told him, I've got some serious stuff going on. Whatever this snake oil is that you're trying to sell me, it's not going to work for me. And then he showed me that mindfulness and meditation can improve your performance, which I'm all about. And when I started practicing to improve my performance, a lot of those other things bubbled to the surface. They didn't go away. Stress, anxiety, depression didn't go away. But I realized that they were an instance in my life. It was a stressful instance that I had experienced and that I was experiencing. That didn't mean my life was stressful. It was a depressing instance. It didn't mean I was depressed or that I was going to live depressed for the rest of my life. And I was able to take those instances into counseling or to talk with a friend and process them in a much more healthy way. And that's what I do today. I meditate when something bubbles to the surface that I need to process. I'll go and talk with my wife, or I'll go and talk with a friend about it, or I'll talk right here with you, Will, on Men Talking Mindfulness about it and process it. Right. And I feel better because of it. And I feel now, because I honestly attribute meditation and living mindfully to changing my life for the better and honestly saving my life, quite literally. I feel it's an obligation to share it with as many people as will listen. So here I am, and over you, brother.
Yeah, well, it's interesting how you came full circle, John. Like you laugh in the face of the instructor or the person that talked about mindfulness in the beginning, and here we are in a mindfulness show, right? And you found your inner hippie with me, right?
I'm trying to grow my hair and get that.
I know, you saw that. I was like, looking good, dude. It's gonna happen. It's gonna keep it going. But yeah, I'm Will Schneider. I'm in New York City. I've been teaching in the yoga, mindfulness, and meditation space for. God, I got my first yoga certification in 2009. I've been practicing yoga and meditation since 2005. So it's been a long time that I've been in this game. And, I'm also bringing more mindfulness to more people, to more companies. I have a virtual platform. You can find me if you need to. willnotfear.com is where all my stuff is. willnotfear.com or all my handles. And it's just like, it's always an honor and a pleasure. And just humbling to bring more of these practices to more people. It's very exciting as well. I know I'm in kind of like more of a woke culture here in New York where more people are seeking these things, and it's nice to see more men want to do these things. I know we keep coming back to men, John, and this is just for women, because I think they've been more in touch with their emotions, and in the sense of being in touch with their emotions, they're more connected to a greater community of women, right? And they talk about things where men, we don't like to ask for help, typically, right. We think we know everything. We don't ask for directions, which we learned, so much in Liz's book. She wrote about that, so funnily as well. But it's really nice to continually have these conversations and open up more of these opportunities for people to discover and weave more mindfulness into their life. And, John and I are super passionate, if you, and reach out to us and we have, we're growing a giant network of people that do this work, and also a giant network of great people that want to learn more of this work. And through learning together and being in community, we can really begin to, kind of grow exponentially in some ways, because we have the support of one another. So, I love that Napoleon Hill, in his awesome book. I wish he was still alive. I'd love to have him on Think and Grow Rich. He says, when two minds come together, a third mind is formed, right? Mm-hmm. And that is really what Men Talking Mindfulness is so much about, is continuing accessing that third mind, right? Where we get to grow and be continually encouraged and put more of our passion in, and have that ripple effect across the world. So thank you, John. This has been... we could probably get another hour and talk about
man.
It's just a start. It is just a start, and and we talked about that vision at the beginning, and we're going to make that happen, and we want to make that happen with all of you out there that's listening. So, thank you for being on this journey with us and creating this space with us. So much appreciation.
Yeah, indeed. Well, that I think is a wrap, man. Unfortunately, I do have to bounce here pretty soon.
No, yeah. Okay. No worries, dude.
Absolutely. I'm not going to be able to do the grounding practice here at the end. But again, thank you all to the audience. Thank you, Will, for making season 2 and just Men Talking Mindfulness what it is. It's just a blast doing this with you. And I love you, brother. And with that, for the audience, if you're listening and you like what you hear, like what you see, jump on iTunes and give us a rating, give us a review, let us know what you think, because it does mean a lot to us and we sincerely appreciate it. And Will, unless you got anything else, man, I'm gonna wrap it up.
No, all I want to say is share it with your friends. Share this. You can easily share this with your friends. Like, share an episode. Hey, you might like this. You can text it. You can share it on your Spotify or onto your Instagram. You can share it everywhere. Share it, please, because we just want to we just want to bring this to more people. And John, thank you. Love you so much. I can't believe season 2 is over. I'm getting a little sad right now. And
I know. What are we going to do next week?
I know. I don't know what the hell I'm going to do next week. I'm not going to. So, right, thanks, John. Have a good one. Thank everybody for listening.
Let's see if we can get this to play again.
Right from the start, couldn't pull us apart. It just works. Like the best friend ever. It just works. Nobody else ever gets me as well on this earth.
Nobody else here.
Like rock and roll, Marshalls and tellies, mac and cheese, PBs and jellies. Some things are better together, and that's you and me. And dude, I love you, bro, I love you, man, I love you. You're my brother from another mother. You are my favorite. I'm not ashamed to admit, 'cause I do, I do, I do, I